Good morning, New Hope family. It is good to see you. I'm thankful to be here and to be up here this morning. We're going to have a fun morning. I promise you that. If there's anything that happens in church today, it's going to be fun. And I'm excited to be here. For those of you that don't know me, I'll just take a quick second to introduce myself and kind of give you a little bit about me. I know a majority of you already know me, but just in case some people don't. My name is Kenny Albert. I'm married. I have a wife. Her name is Megan Albert. We have been here at New Hope now for 8 years. We've been serving as the youth pastors. Pastor Dale brought us on in 2014, and we've been here ever since. And so my role has kind of changed and morphed a little bit, taking on new things. So I help oversee all of our tech stuff, on and off switch. If it's got an on or off switch, or you can turn it off, I know how to work it. So that's what I do. I make sure everybody's computers stay running, TVs are working. I do a little bit of everything, and so it is just an honor to be up here. I love New Hope. I really do. I love this church. I love this community. I love Concord in the Cabarrus County. And so it's just great. I grew up in Jersey, so now you know why I love it so much down here, you know. I grew up as a pastor's kid my whole life, so ministry is really all I've ever known. My dad was a youth pastor. My dad's actually been at the church he's at now for 30 plus years. So I believe in longevity. I believe that you can't build relationship unless you're where you're at. And so I'm just thankful that God has placed me with just Pastor Dale and Pastor Carey and the staff that we have here. We have just an amazing staff. So I'm thankful this morning. I don't know if you're thankful this morning. I'm thankful this morning. So today I'm going to be continuing this series that we kicked off last week. Does anybody know the name of it? Seek. Oh, look at that. Look, it's up on the screen. It's called Seek, and we are setting the course for 2023. I think it's a great way to start a new year, is having an idea and knowing where you're going. Because if you don't know where you're going, you will find yourself in some weird and crazy positions in some spots. So Pastor Dale started last week with a message called Finding God in the Word, and he was talking about the importance of that this year we are people of the Word. That's who we are as a church anyway. But it's important that we kick off the year with the Word of God. Today, as we were getting ready for this series about a month ago or so, Pastor Dale told me that he was going to ask me. He believed that I had the word for this Sunday, and so he kind of have a list of topics and things that we were going to talk about in this series. And so he kind of laid them all out, and he said, "Which one do you feel like that? What's the word that God's speaking to you?" And I knew instantly which one it was. And so if you're taking notes this morning, today's message is this: finding God in people. Finding God in people. And what I want to talk about this morning is I want to talk about relationships. Because I have seen the importance of relationships even in my own life. It's true that we are, as human beings, we are a lot of who we are because of the relationships that we've had in the past, right? I know that as I get older, okay, and I have kids, and maybe parents, you've experienced this already, I say things to my kids, like if they get in trouble or if they do something, and then I go, "Oh my goodness, I sound like my dad." Oh my goodness. And then you try to be intentionally not sounding like your dad, but no matter how hard you try, you end up sounding more and more like your dad. Even when I watch myself when I speak, because I watched my dad speak hundreds and hundreds of times. And so when I get done watching myself, later in the week, I go, "Oh my goodness, Kenny, you are exactly like your dad. Your motions, the way I talk, the things I say, I'm like, I try so hard not to be, but I still just end up doing it." And so, but we're formed by the relationships that we've had in the past. How many of you guys? Some of you guys have, maybe some records because of some relationships that you've had in your past. If anybody ever have that one best friend that you just cause a lot of trouble with? Anybody have a friend like that? Maybe it was a cousin or a brother. Maybe you were just really close with your sibling or just somebody you always cause trouble with. I had one of those, and I know I've talked about him before. His name was Mike, and so Mike Coleman, and Mike was my best friend. He's still my best friend even to this day, and so we would just do dumb stuff together. And so the reasons that I got in trouble was I blame on Mike. Now, Mike probably blames it on me, but I blame on Mike. For instance, one time we had this great idea. Fireworks are still illegal in New Jersey. And so, but anytime that any of us would go down to like Virginia or, we would make our way through South Carolina or something like that, we would stop and we would always get bottle rockets. Bottle rockets are a lot of fun if you've never played with them. And so we had this genius idea of, hey, what if we had a bottle rocket war? Like where you're on one side, I'm on the other side, let's light them off at each other, and let's see what happens. And then we added to it, and we're like, you know what? What if we did it at night? So then you couldn't even see somebody lighting it. You would just see a bottle rocket, flying at your face. And so where I'm from, it's like a lot of sand because like New Jersey's by the beach, so it's on the coastline. So where I'm from, it's actually not a lot of grass. It's just a lot of sand. And so we were in like this dirt bike trail, and we're about, maybe 20 yards away from each other. And we decided, it was two teams, it was 2 versus 2, and we're standing, I can't see him, all I can see is the lighter, just a little faint light, and then you see the light go away, and then you wait about 5 seconds, and then you just see a bottle rocket just flying at your forehead. And so we thought this is a great idea, so we're lighting bottle rockets off at each other. I had a really good shot one time, and what happened was that I lit a rocket. Mike's on the other side. I lit a rocket. It flew at Mike, bounced off his head. It's the craziest thing. Went in the air and blew up right above him. And it was the craziest thing in the air. And it was so funny because Mike was like, dude, that bottle rocket just hit me in my head. It was the craziest thing. How boys are? If they just miss out on danger, like if you just squeak by, it's like the greatest thing in the whole entire world. I almost died, but man, I did it. So that's how it was my relationship with Mike. We would a lot of stuff that we did when we were younger, we couldn't get away with because everybody's got cameras everywhere and all that fun stuff. But Mike is a big part of who I am today. I never got caught, thankfully. But we did a lot of dumb stuff together, and I'm sure you have your friendships and your relationships that you did dumb stuff together with too as well. Relationships are important. See, here's the thing that I've come to realize, and I want you to understand, we need people in our lives. We need people. You may not be a people person. Can I get an amen for all the, amen? Those aren't the people I normally would say amen, so that's why I was kind of quiet, But we need people in our lives, even people who are secluded and kind of enjoy their time to themselves. We need people. And the reason that we need people is because that's the way we were created. We need people because that's the way we were designed and created. Think about all the things that God created in the heavens and the earth, especially when he was creating earth, and each day he ended with, it's good, it is good, it is good. But what was the one thing that God did not find good? That man was alone. And so what did he do? He created Eve so that Adam had someone. It's in our DNA. It is in who we've been created to be in relationship and to have people around us. Now, when it comes to relationships, and this morning, there's a lot of things I could talk about. There's a lot of different avenues. There's a lot of different spokes that come out of the wheel of relationships. So today we don't talk about it much, but it is important, our relationships with our parents. That son and daughter, that mother, that's important to have. It's important to have a healthy relationship with your parents. And parents, it's important to have a healthy relationship with your kids. So we could talk about that, but we're not. We could talk about sibling relationships. There's a lot of families that are broken right now because of stuff that happened 20, 30 years ago. And so you have siblings not even speaking to each other. Now, they may be valid. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that it may have been nothing. I'm just saying that it's important to have a relationship with your siblings. We could talk about marriage. Talk about marriage relationships and how the divorce rate is just skyrocketing. That's the one thing about the divorce rate. It never goes down. It's always continuing to climb. Even this past week, I was, just a couple weeks ago, I was talking with a very close friend of mine who just got married and then a month later is walking through an annulment process. The enemy attacks. And so there's a lot of relationships that we could talk about. Marriage, siblings. We could talk about friends and just like the church relationship. So like what we're doing right now, the gathering. But today what I want to talk about, I was having a really hard time because I didn't want to use very churchy words. But today what I want to talk about is why we need close, godly relationships. And at first I had godly close relationships, but then I thought if you say the first two words together too quick, it just sounds weird. So today we're talking about close, godly relationships. And so in parentheses, I have accountability. Accountable. We need accountable relationships. We need people who are close, but not only are they close to us, they need to be godly. It means that they need to be on the same page, working towards the same goal. See, out of no true intentions, we, believers, a lot of us are living life with very little or no godly close relationships or friendships. We do a great job at coming to church, but for maybe most of us, that's as far as we take in our relationships. We do a really good job at coming in the doors on Sunday morning, putting the smile on, being, "How are you today? It's good to see you. Thankful you're here." You know, we can do that really well because it's only taken up an hour of our time, but none of us have been able to go that next step, that next level, that deeper relationship that goes beyond just, "Hey, how are you?" "Oh, I'm good. Thanks for asking." When there's really, it's kind of like one of those things that, you have close, godly relationships when people can just look at you and they go, "What's wrong? What's wrong? You're not yourself right now. What's going on?" That's the type of relationships that I'm talking about. And that's what many of us don't have within this moment. We as a staff and as pastors, we have seen and are seeing the hurt and the pain that people have because of this disconnection. I want to tell you something. You may not feel like this, but there are a lot of people who feel alone. And there's a lot of people who are taking their own lives because they think that it's just the better way. For those of you that, kind of keep up with, like mainstream, like media news, like people who have passed, like if that's kind of, some of us are like, I have no idea who this person is. But I know just like a couple of weeks ago, you had that dancer, Twitch, take his own life. Somebody who had money, who had a family, who would post videos dancing and and being completely happy, but took his life in a hotel room by himself. And so there's a lot of people who are hurting and struggling because they don't have these close relationships. The easiest prey to catch is the prey that is isolated from the group. The easiest prey to catch is the prey that is isolated from the group. The lie that we as believers have come to believe is that we can do it on our own. Now, I know for most of us, we haven't realized that we've actually been living like this. For some of us, maybe just recently because of a crisis or something that has happened, you began to look around and you saw, wait, I don't know who to call. I don't know who to talk to about this. I don't feel like I have anybody to turn to. And so for some of us, we've gotten to the point where we haven't even realized that this is the way we're living our life, is disconnected. It's just slowly happening. Doesn't life just happen? Right? It just slowly just happens. And so I've talked about this before, you don't realize the big changes. It's just little corrections that happen in our life. And we realize each little step, we get a little bit farther away, just a little bit. But over a course of time, if you allow that little bit to build up, it turns into a lot of bit. And so for us, we've become disconnected. And it's only been a little bit, but that little bit has turned into a lot of bit. So I want you to take a moment for a second. I want to ask you some real questions. How are your relationships? Seriously, think about it for a second. How are the relationships in your life? How shallow or deep are they? Are they all surface level? Do you have anybody that you can go deep with? Do you have anybody in your life that is not always asking you for what they can get out of you? For instance, if you have a truck, you know all about this, right? If you got a truck, hey man, I need to move my fridge. Hey, can you help us move? I'll give you some pizza. Like if you got a truck, you've got a lot of shallow relationships in your life. You're always getting asked to do stuff. But how deep are the relationships in your life? Do you really have anybody that asks you how you are doing? Do you have anybody in your life that says, hey, what you've been reading this week in the Word? Hey, what you've been praying about? Hey, what has God been speaking to you? Because people who ask those questions don't care just about the surface level. They want to know at a deeper level how you are doing. But there's so many of us that are stuck in the surface level and we don't have people asking the right questions. So as we roll into 2023, I want us to understand that God is calling us to set a course in our lives to have people involved. We have to have people involved. We have to stop trying to fight this on our own and begin and to allow ourselves and to take the time to create relationships. Now, I'm not saying you need 20 to 30 people that know all of your business. I'm not saying we need that. That's not healthy either. But I want you to begin to form and set a goal for 2023. I want you to see how God can reveal his characteristics through other people, through those close godly relationships. 1 to 3 people who are in your life, who are walking it with you, walking through the battles, but also walking through the joys that life brings. There is nothing better than sharing the joy with other people. I watch a lot of YouTube and different podcasts, and Mark Cuban, who is the owner of the Dallas Mavericks, he talks about, somebody asked him a question, hey, what's one of the best parts about owning a franchise team, a sports team? And he said, when somebody wins, when that team hits a big winning shot, or a big, something, or they win a championship, or, when they win something, as the owner, he gets to go down and celebrate with the team. No, everybody else is stuck in the stands, but the owner gets to go down and celebrate with the team. He didn't make the shot, but he gets to partake in the joy that's happening within that moment. And so we need relationships because there are things that are happening in your life, and you're like, yeah! And you realize there's no one around to celebrate it with. You need that. You need that in your life. So let's take a few minutes, and I want to talk, and I want to dive into what godly relationships do for us and how we can find God's character in them. Does that sound good? All right. I'm going to start off with a verse. We're going to start with Ecclesiastes. It's our verse of the week. So you can go ahead and go Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verses 9 to 12. This is my first point of the morning. Godly relationships bring protection. One of the reasons that we need godly, close relationships in our life is because they bring protection. Ecclesiastes 4, I'm reading out of CSB, says this: 2 are better than 1 because they have a good reward for their efforts. For if either falls, his companion can lift him up. Say, lift him up. It's important you understand that. But pity the one who falls without another to lift him up. Also, if 2 lie down together, they can keep warm. But how can one person keep warm alone? And if someone overpowers one person, 2 can resist him. A cord of 3 strands is not easily broken. If you watched Pastor's Proverbs video, he talked about Ecclesiastes just a little bit, where he talked about how Solomon almost seems like a little bit of a negative Nancy in some moments, but he talks about all the things that are futile. And so Ecclesiastes is like, Solomon is talking about a lot of things like, hey, this is just futile. Like, seeking this out, wanting to do this, it's just futile. There's no point to it. At the end of the day, there's nothing it does not matter. But here, Solomon makes a very distinct and important point that friendships and relationships are not futile. Instead of saying futile, he actually goes in and explains why they're important. That wisdom that he gives us. So I kind of have a fun illustration. Can I do something fun? Does that sound good? I'm going to move this over here. Austin, give me the one that's under you. I'm going to use those in a second, though. All right, I've got a shield here. All right. So this shield, remember I was talking about how a lot of us are isolated and alone? And we're fighting these battles and we're fighting these things by ourselves. Here's the thing I want you to understand. Yes, there's probably quite a bit that you can fight alone. This shield is big enough. You know, I think about it in this way. When you think about the armor of God, it's the shield of faith. Shield of faith. And so here's my faith. I'm holding on to it. I've got some people, if you came to church early today, you would have had a good, I've got some volunteers that are going to help me out. And so my front two sections, you guys ready? Here we go. I can do and protect myself alone. So go ahead, front two sections. All right, it's good. Hold it there. If the attack is coming from one angle, I can do a pretty good job of defending myself. But what happens, and how many of you know that the enemy does not just attack from one angle? All right, go ahead, guys, everybody. All right, it's good, hold it. You guys got some left? Hold on. Okay. You guys have some left? You guys got a couple? Okay. Listen, if I'm by myself, if I am standing alone, if I can hold this shield all day, but if I am by myself, I can't defend myself from every attack of the enemy. Because the enemy doesn't attack in just one position. How many of you know that when the enemy comes, he comes after your finances, he comes after your family, he comes after your job, he comes after your health. And so you can think that I'm strong enough to hold myself, but he's not just coming from the front. He's coming from everywhere. So we need more people. Mr. Kenneth Reed, would you make your way up? I already gave him a heads up. Kenneth, come on up, buddy. I want to use him today because he has a great name. Nick, can you hand him one of those? And Mike Torrance, I saw you back there. Can you come up? Can I have your help real fast? Nick, there's another one underneath of you. I need your help, okay? Does that sound good? Come on in close. Can you guys give it up for our volunteers? One that knew, one that didn't. Come on up, Mike. All right, so what I want you to do, I'm going to position you, okay? You're going to stand here. You're going to turn just a little bit. Yep. You're protecting me from Rodney over there. He's got muscles. All right. You're going to protect me from this crew over here. They're just ambitious, all right? So we got muscles and we got ambition, and when you mix them together. All right, now here's the fun thing. Now we got to come in a little bit close, okay? Because, all right, so I'll come in here. There you go. All right. What has happened? I'm more protected because I have people around me. Now listen, not only am I more protected, but what am I doing? I'm protecting them as well. Because while they may be watching my left and my right, I'm protecting their center. I'm protecting over here. And so what happens is that, you kind of picture like a Spartans when they would put their shields together. This is what we're doing. We are coming together. We're taking Kenneth's faith, my faith, Mike's faith, and we're putting it together so that we can defend ourselves from all the attacks of the enemy. So it's not just one thing. I need Kenneth by my side. If I don't have Kenneth by my side, my left side is weak. I need Mike. If Mike is not on my right side, I am weak. So if I were just to come out of this, I'm now isolated. I'm not in the protection that my brothers and sisters can bring to me. So now, you guys ready? They're coming. You ready? All right, here we go. Ready? All right, go ahead. Just let them rain. Let them rain. Let them rain. There you go. All right, give it up for my volunteers, everybody. You guys can hand the shields in there. Listen, when you have people around you, it's not just it's not just a suggestion. It's a requirement. If you really want to get through this life, if you really want to experience love and you want to experience the protection that God can bring in you, He's going to use people around you. Yes, God will divinely protect you. He will have miracles happen. When I flipped the car a couple months ago with my kids in the back, divine protection. Okay? But when I'm faced with things and the enemy's attacking me just emotionally and spiritually, I need close, godly relationships who are willing to get close to me enough that if I were to fall, if I were to drop to a knee there, what would have happened? Mike could have just easily, hey, come on, I got you, get up. You know? And we need those types of relationships because those relationships bring protection in our life. We can't do this alone. We need relationships. You cannot isolate yourself from the battlefield of life. Even MMA and fighters and boxers, they have people in their corners who are watching them. Because if it gets too crazy, what are they going to do? They're going to throw in the towel. They're going to protect their fighter. We can find the protection of God through the people that we place around us. And a lot of times, God meets the provision in our life by the people around us. In Acts chapter 2, verses 44 to 45, it says, all believers were together and had everything in common. And they sold their property and possessions, not to get rich, but to give to anyone who had need. A lot of the times, God uses the relationships around us to even provide for the things that we need. We need people. We need relationships. We need godly people in our life to help protect us from the plans of the enemy, to help pick us up when we're broken, to help sustain and encourage us when we feel lost and desolate. Godly relationships bring protection. Next one is godly relationships bring awareness and wisdom. A lot of this you can read in the book of Proverbs, which is what we're reading right now. In our reading plan, in Proverbs chapter 13, verse 20, it says, the one who walks with the wise will become wise, but a companion of fools will suffer him. The one who walks with the wise will become wise, but a companion of the fools will suffer harm. You know, this is so true. I know I've had a lot of great conversations with a lot of you. Anytime I speak, I always love when people come up and they say, man, to see the difference in 8 years is remarkable. Now, I don't know if I should take that as a compliment. Man, how bad was I 8 years ago? And it's not to boast, it's not to brag or anything like that, but one of the reasons, I truly believe this, one of the reasons that there's been such a growth in my life is because, and you can ask him this, I have clung myself to Pastor Dale. If you want to become wise, you surround yourself with wise people. And so what I saw as I was figuring out ministry, I realized real early on that I have to, he's my pastor, one, but also he's got wisdom that I need in my life. And so a lot of the growth that you've seen is because I have somebody that I'm walking this out with who's wiser than me and can pour into me, who can see me, who pours himself into me. And we all need that, but so many of us are hanging around people who aren't wise. And what's happened is that we're finding ourselves making stupid decisions, teenagers, and dumb choices. It's because you're walking with fools. You haven't surrounded yourself with people who are wise. And so you've got to be intentional with those decisions. Who you hang out with is an intentional decision that you make. So if you want to be wise, you've got to walk with wise people. Proverbs 27, verse 6 says this. This is really good. If you thought the first one was good, check this one out. The wounds of a friend are trustworthy, but the kisses of an enemy are excessive. The wounds of a friend are trustworthy, but the kisses of an enemy are excessive. This is such an important part of ministry to me and to my life, and I hope you understand this. We need correction. If you think you have it all together, if you think you can do no wrong, if you think that you are the smartest person in the room, you are instantaneously the dumbest one in the room. You have to be open to correction. And so, there was times in my life in these past 8 years that I've had to come to myself and go to my pastor and be like, I messed up. And there's been times in my life When when you get called into the boss's office, it's kind of like, it's a fun relationship we have because he's my boss, but I know what he's about to speak to me is not just a place of corporate, hey, you need to get this done. It comes from a place of love, of friendship, and so I can trust that what he's seeing is beneficial for me in the long run. But if you don't have anybody calling you out on your stuff, if you don't have a trustworthy friend, because you're one of those people that if they criticize you or just say one thing about you, then you get all your panties in a bunch and now you're all mad. And now you're frustrated with them and you just sever the relationship and you move on. It's up to you. It's up to you. So you've got to create these relationships and allow those relationships and be trustworthy enough because you need people to call you out. If you feel drained, I want you to take a look at the relationships that you have around you. If you have people who are always just trying to take from you and never actually taking time to pour into you and to bring awareness, your perspective is unique. How you grew up is important to who you are. I need the perspective of Kenneth Reed and Mike in my life. I need their perspective because they've done things, they've gone through things, they've seen things that I have not experienced. But if I shut those experiences out, if I shut those perspectives out, you miss out on something. So you need to have godly relationships that bring awareness and wisdom to your life. It's kind of like friendships, close friendships and relationships that can, when I think about that passage, the wounds of a friend are trustworthy. It's kind of like the way they remove skin cancer. My father-in-law he's always had a boat, so he's always been out in the sun, and so he had a piece of skin cancer behind his ear, and so he was telling us what they were going to do. And so what they would do is that they would remove a layer, and then they would test it. And then if it was still showed signs, they would remove another layer, and then they would test it. And that's the kind of thing that friendships do, is that they help us. If you don't remove it now, and that's what friendships do, they make you aware of the things in your life that you need to remove, and they help remove it. Yeah, it's a wound, but it's going to heal. Yeah, it's a wound, but it's only making you better. It's removing the cancer from your skin that could cause a lot more destruction in your life. And if you don't have people in your life that is noticing that and helping you remove those cancer cells, it's just going to overtake you one day. All right, last one. Godly relationships bring you closer to Jesus. Truly, that's what it's about. We want godly relationships so we have somebody to walk this out with. We have godly relationships because at the end of the day, our goal is the same. It's to be closer to Jesus. Is to look more like Christ. Is to change and transform the world around us. And so that's the ultimate goal. You need people in your life who are helping you move forward in the things of God. People who are helping you to show the love of Jesus to others. People who are willing to hold you accountable to things that you want to accomplish and the changes you want to make in your life. It's easy to say that 2023 is going to be a different year. It's a different thing to be held accountable for the words that you said. We all have relationships, but we should truly seek after relationships. We should truly seek after relationships that are helping us press forward to the things of God in our life. You can have some great friends that don't go to church. I have some. But if I'm missing the godly relationships, those great friends aren't going to help me, they aren't going to propel me forward into the things of God. They're not going to propel me forward into the fruits of the Spirit. And so that's why we need godly relationships, is because we need help being propelled forward to the things that God has in your life. God has plans for you. Anybody breathing this morning? Guess what? He has plans. He has things for you. You are not just here, but there is an actual purpose and a plan. And in order to accomplish those plans, you need godly people to come beside you and propel you forward. So how do we create godly relationships? Great question. Whoever said that over there. That's a great question. I have two ways. Two ways that we create godly relationships. One, we need to seek godly relationships. These are relationships that don't always just fall flat. Just, boom, somebody's here. They're relationships that you have to seek after. It's going up to somebody and saying, hey, you know what Pastor Kenny talked about this morning? I need that. And I just felt like you were maybe one of the people that could help me accomplish that. You have to, at some point, if it's something you want, you have to actually do something. If you want a job, you actually have to fill an application, right? Because it says, hey, I want this job. And it's the same thing for relationships. You have to go up to somebody and say, hey, I need this relationship in my life. I need to seek, I need, right now, I need somebody. Would you be willing? Be honest and be open and just seek after those people that you trust. And not only do you have to seek those relationships, but after you seek them and you have them, you need to steward them. You need to steward godly relationships. I know relationships take time. And to say yes to something means saying no to something else. And there's too many of us. There's too many of us that are not stewarding the godly relationships that we have in our life already. You need to spend time with those people. We seek godly relationships by, I'm coming back a little bit, but by getting involved in life groups and serving. One way that we seek godly relationships and steward godly relationships is by coming early to church and staying late. I know you've got to get to K&W before the line starts. But in order to actually steward those relationships, you need time in those relationships. So spend some time in our connection area. And don't just eat alone. Take the initiative. Say, hey, I see you every Sunday, and I'm sorry, but I don't know your name. Can you tell me what your name is? Oh, what do you do for work? Oh, you have a family. Oh, that's great. What's their age? Seek and develop and steward those godly relationships. Spend time with people often. Say no to other things. Prioritize these relationships that you do have. Start a small group. Start a life group. Be the one who's stewarding other people's relationships. Be accountable to somebody. Be honest. Be open. Prioritize. I want to close out with this. I think Jesus is always the best example that we have for everything, right? He's the best example for love. He's the best example for grace, for mercy, for sacrifice. How to change the world. He's the best example. And as I was studying for this, I think I found a really cool example of how Jesus showed that he had godly relationships in his life as well. In Luke chapter 22, this may seem a little bit of left field, but I promise I'll bring this in. At least I will try my best to land the plane. In Luke chapter 22, in several different gospels as well, we have the prayer that happens right before Jesus is betrayed. And I want you to check this out because this kind of took me by surprise when I was reading this. It's starting in verse 39 to 46. It says, he went out and made his way as usual to the Mount of Olives, and the disciples followed him. And when he reached the place, he told them, pray that you may not fall in temptation. Then he withdrew from them about a stone throws away. Depending on who was throwing the stone, it was different distances. My throw is much different than Bernadette's throw, obviously. But it's just a stone throw away. And he knelt down and began to pray. And he said, Father, if you're willing, take this cup away from me. Nevertheless, not my will be, but yours be done. And then an angel in heaven appeared to him, strengthening him. And being in anguish, he prayed even more fervently. And his sweat became like drops of blood falling to the ground. And when he got up from the prayer, he came to his disciples. And I want you to catch this line. He found them sleeping and exhausted from their grief. And he says, "Why are you sleeping?" He asked them. "Get up and pray so that you won't fall in temptation." I read this and I saw the word grief for the first time. Because whenever I read this passage or the Garden of Gethsemane, you're probably the same way. I always looked at this passage as Jesus was like yelling at the disciples. Like that's the way they did it, like in these videos as kids. "Get up! Wake up! Stop falling asleep. Can't you just stay up and pray?" And first off, I want you to understand that Jesus didn't say, I don't think Jesus was angry. The whole reason Jesus had them praying and he was explaining was just so that they wouldn't fall into temptation. But here's the thing is that Jesus brought his disciples intentionally. And because of how close Jesus was, the disciples could hear what Jesus was saying. And so I'm sure that when they're hearing what Jesus is praying, they probably began to pray for the same exact things that Jesus was praying for. See, here's the thing is that I realized in this moment that Jesus needed his disciples. That grief that the disciples were exhausted from, I think there was a burden that they were carrying in partnership with Jesus. I'm not saying they were carrying the whole thing. I'm just saying as godly relationships, because I'm sure Jesus wanted the disciples around him just as much as the disciples wanted Jesus around them. Jesus did not do his ministry alone, but he did it with his disciples. He did it with a select few that were around him constantly. And if Jesus needs relationships, how much more do we? Even Jesus needed godly close relationships. Even Jesus needed deep relationships. So how much more do you? Would you bow your heads and close your eyes? Listen, I know the sacrifice that I'm asking you to make. I know that saying yes to relationships is saying no to something else, but I want you to understand is that you need it. You need it. Coming to church is not just good enough. Coming to church is not enough. You need to be connected. You need to be accountable. You need to steward the relationships. You need to steward good, godly relationships in your life because you were not created to do this alone. You were not created to fight this battle on your own. And so there's protection waiting from God through those relationships. There's wisdom on the other side of those relationships from God. Pursuing Jesus, a closer relationship with Jesus is on the other side of those relationships. But it's up to you to make the choice. So I want to encourage you this year. I want to encourage you not just this week. I want to encourage you this year to put a priority on godly relationships. Seek somebody out and then steward those relationships. And so Jesus, here we are. Non-perfect people, but made righteous in the eyes of God because of Jesus Christ. And so Father, today, I pray that my words were your words. I pray that, Father, that people would see 2023 as a year of relationships. That men would become bold and courageous and seek other men out. That ladies who feel desperate and alone would seek out the wisdom of another lady. Someone to walk life through. Someone to rejoice with. Someone to fight battles with. Someone to celebrate with. That we would be intentional in those relationships. So, Father, I thank you that you're leading us and you're guiding us. Father, I even pray that this week somebody will pop into our mind that we need to build a relationship with. Father, I pray that we would go the extra mile and get connected, whether it be life groups or small groups or whatever it is, that, Father, we would just step up to the calling that you have. And we give you all the praise, and we give you all the glory in your precious name. And the whole church says nice and strong, amen.